we're in a cold civil war that could turn hot at any time. So we've just got to keep pushing and try to get Biden elected and then push him to the left. And we just got to get Trump out of office. So we're going to talk a little bit about PDA's plans tonight. I see Mimi has joined us. Hello, Mimi.
Hi.
And we're going to hear from Mimi, who's our voting integrity guru. She's going to tell us what we need to do to make sure our vote gets counted. And before we jump to that, just want to make my little pitch that, again, if you can sign up with PDA and make donations, try to sign on for sustaining donations so that they can get monthly donations. It helps them plan their budget better. And we've got great people working for us, but we'd like to be able to pay them, and which we're doing, but I mean, we need the money to pay them. Hey, Shirley.
Hi,
So
isn't that nice? I'm here. Thank you very much.
Hi, Shirley.
You can go to pdamerica.org and sign up, do the Change Makes Change, the sustaining donation. And it's especially good to do it now because we're not passing the hat since we're not together. We were doing a little bit of collection at our meetings for our local chapter, and we're not doing that now. So now you can just pop that over to PDA. So with that, I guess that what we'll do is we'll start out, since Mimi is here. Teresa, would you like to, she probably needs no introduction, but we're going to let you introduce her anyway.
Yeah, I just have a short one. Mimi is an actress. She's on the Mom TV series right now. She did Dharma Greg, other TV series and movies. And she's a PDA board member, co-coordinator of PDA's election issues team, and was a key supporter of Dennis Kucinich's campaign for the presidency. All right, I'm fooling around. Oh, there, I got it. Okay. Mimi, would you like to tell us about elections, and can you give us good news?
There is good news. There is good news. First of all, just.
Oh, you're on mute.
I am?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I should be. Teresa, you were going in and out. There might be something on your end. I don't know if you were going in and out.
I can hear her okay.
Okay.
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, there is some good news. Basically, I think I'm also going to want you guys to ask questions because I know there's a lot of residue from the rollout of LA's new system, and I know it has vicious opponents. And I was on the panel that set principles for it, and at the time, a lot of the panel was saying they wanted to vote on their phones, and we were going to have internet voting and do everything on our phones because the kids, don't you know, love the phones, and otherwise the young people would never vote. It was so pandery and awful. And there's also was a concern among ADA. We have a very strong disability rights legal group out of Loyola Marymount University and law school. So it got bad, but I said, got to have a paper ballot, and it can't be counted by the machine that produces it if you use a machine to produce it. But I know their hand-marked paper ballots were off the table on my panel because of the legal ADA people. Like I would have had to say I resigned from this whole panel because that can't happen. It was happening. Electronic poll books, I remember asking what happens if the electronic poll books goes down. We have always had voting never stops from bad old Connie McCormick. That was the prideful message from LA County. And the woman next to me from the Irvine Foundation, very Republican, who was funding this thing, said, that's huge. She got it. She understood. So we backed off technology a little bit. We had a lot of stuff. But anyway, that was the story 6-7 years ago when it was being planned. And then up above my panel, we just not disbanded, but we were excused kind of. And they went on to a technical panel and a cyber panel. And that's where all the BMV stuff happened. So a QR code happened. And I said, called Dean and said, the activist community is never going to go for the QR code. You've got to find a way to read the actual printing on the ballot. And he said it's not available in 11 languages. So that's not going to happen. We have to get it with the QR code. But one thing we will do is have an identifier number for every answer on the ballot. Jerry Brown, Mimi Kennedy, Teresa Priam, we would all be, LE952 or, BE350. And that the QR code, if you put it under, you would get that line of stuff and you could check your QR code that way. That was something, but nobody knows about that. Anyway, that's how we vote in person, as I'm sure you know. But we, for a long time, the activist community lobbied for hand-marked paper ballots. Lo and behold, this year, that's exactly what we have. 100% of registered voters in California are getting passively mail ballot. And I used to think this would be a terrible idea, and now I'm really glad for it because of COVID. Why did I think it was a terrible idea? Because I've been a poll worker long enough to see dozens of voters disqualified from voting regular every election because they were on the list as having gotten a mail ballot and they didn't know they had to surrender at the polls in order to vote a regular ballot. So we were giving out provisionals like candy and it was a mess. We ended up, as you know, with like 400,000 provisionals or something in 2015. But the good news is that the electronic poll books have erased that problem entirely. And you no longer have a clash between your mail ballot and if you want to vote in person. Why? Because the electronic poll book, of course, if it's not hacked, but it is in direct contact on a virtual private network. It's some sort of thing that's not quite the internet. It has several layers of secure socket layer encryption. It can find out directly at the registrars whether your mail ballot has been received. And if it hasn't been received because you didn't vote it or you never got it, then they let you vote regular right at the polls. Oh. So that's all a new thing, and it removed the problem I thought was the biggest fraud hole in California, and we don't have it anymore.
What if it shows that your ballot was received, but you say you didn't vote it?
I asked Dean that, and he said that's the only time we will issue a provisional. But the reason we have that is we now will log all the people who said that was true for them, and we will have a pattern of possible illegitimate activity. Because I do think there has been in the past harvesting, robbery of mailboxes for mail ballots the way they rob for Social Security checks, and it could affect small races, somebody's city council race or school board. Anyway, if it's doable, people might do it. But it had to be on a big scale, and now it's very risky, and now it can't even be done successfully, which is great. At least it can't be done in California. No more surrender rule. This is local. We'll go into national in a minute. Now, I'm going to vote my mail ballot, I think. And I think I'm going to stick it in the mail early because I have a new concern that will not be happening here in California because our mail ballots are tracked. Every mail ballot has a barcode on the outside envelope. And when it arrives, they scan it and the barcode says mail ballot arrived on October 29th, 7 p.m. or whatever. I talked to Ion Sancho about this today. Do you all remember the name Ion Sancho, Leon County, Florida? Yeah. He was a hero in Florida 2000. He stood up. He talked about how bad things were. He's a good guy. And we had him here at a PDA election integrity meeting very early on some years ago. But Ion Sancho's good. And I talked to him and he said most mail ballots in the United States have this, but not all. He wasn't sure, so I'm checking. But we do in California. But what I'm worried about is unpostmarked mail ballots that are dropped off somewhere. They come into a registrar's office without a postmark. And this happened to Dean Logan long ago in Kings County. And somebody managed to put the batch behind a desk somewhere. And then they're discovered later. And they need to be counted, of course. Well, I'm picturing a legal team swooping in and going, you can't count those. Why not? Well, because they were found behind a desk. They have no postmark. And how do you know when they arrived? They weren't even scanned. Their barcodes weren't even scanned. These must have all been voted after the election, taken to a judge, and we are saying they can't be counted. And if that barcode, if there's no record of the provenance that can prove they've arrived in the office before Election Day, I am very worried that such ballots would be under attack, and maybe legitimately or maybe illegitimately, I don't know. But a postmark is a guarantee against that. However, I'm not saying you need to postmark your ballot, because here in California, we do have this barcode situation. And I said to Ian, well, if they're picked up on a drop by, say, early voting closes at 8 p.m., and this big bunch of mail ballots that everybody dropped off, say 246 mail ballots, is somebody there at 9 p.m. in the election office running those things under the barcode? They can't get lost. And Ian did say, most election offices are running 24/7 through an election cycle. He said things do not close at election offices during an election. Now, I don't know if that's legal or what, because I've never been to an election office at 11 p.m. on October 29th. But I was reassured by this registrar, who I have little reason to doubt, but I am not reassured about the whole of the United States. But if you want to do a hand-marked paper ballot, which is what Brad Friedman has been advocating for LA to get around the BMD and the barcode the QR code tabulation, now we have our chance. We can hand-mark our paper ballot. Just so you know, the tabulator that both looks at the dots on our hand-marked paper ballot and looks at the QR code on a BMD ballot is the same tabulator. So worrying about hacked tabulation is always, always something to worry about. I think many of you know about the thing called fraction magic that Bev Harris and Benny Smith discovered maybe 5 years ago in all of Diebold and ES&S and Dominion's GEMS voting system. It goes back to the inception of this tabulating system when e-voting machines just started. And what it is when you count the votes, you're using counting software that comes from somebody who used it for financial stuff, meaning 100 cents on the dollar. Meaning you have, or I think it's still in there, you have the opportunity to count in double numbers. And then you put in an algorithm that makes 3/5 of a vote out of a Democrat or a Black person or a Latino, or 2/5 of a vote. And then once you've reallocated all these portions and weights of votes, you put the election back together without the decimals. Nobody knows you've ever used them. And in an election where 20,000 people voted, you have 20,000 votes. It's just that some of them were fattened up and some of them were thinned down, and you have a stolen election. Now, that's been out there for a long time. Cybersecurity specialists warned the United States about it shortly after we started screaming about it, because, you know, they had to, and they went to to Capitol Hill and said, we need to be worried after 2016 that somebody's put in a backdoor and that they would put in a fraction program later. So I know they're aware of it, so I'm not as scared this year. And John Brakey, who is a man from Arizona that I've worked with for 10 years, Audit USA, he has the ballot image solution. You may have heard of what ballot images are. Every ballot now, I think, in the United States, every ballot is scanned and the scanners take a JPEG, a picture of the whole ballot. And those ballot images can be kept and looked at much easier than the paper ballots can be accessed by the public. So John Brady has been doing court cases with an Obama lawyer, Chris Sauter, for now on 4 years, and he's being very well funded. We used to have to give him pennies, just like PDA, but he's being funded now. People get it. And he has had court cases trying to get secretaries of state to tell the counties, you have to preserve those records under state law and federal law. And we're getting somewhere. It's not all done, but the county registrars are scared. They know if anything happens in their county and they don't have these images to produce to say, this is actually the accurate election, then we know they're kind of dirty. And in Florida, they just won a case. We know Florida's still planning to be dirty because the case John Brady won was ballot images will be preserved the second time we send the ballots through the scanner, only if there's a recount. And they're like, why wouldn't you preserve the ballot images from the first time you scanned them? That's the whole point. No, Judge, we can't do that. It's too expensive and too hard. But if there's a recount, okay, then we'll preserve the ballot images. So it was an incremental step forward, but we're hoping Jamie Raskin and he's the House Administration Committee Vice Chair. They have oversight over the Election Assistance Commission. We hope he's going to tell the Election Assistance Commission, please tell all the secretaries of state ballot images are federal records. Here's the law. It says all records must be preserved. It was written before computers, but it means digital records. So you got to keep your digital records, so you got to keep your ballot images. That's the counting side. All of this activity is a deterrent to anybody messing up the counting side because they know there are people on trigger alert to go, whoa, where's your ballot images? And what about fraction magic? And cybersecurity people in the United States are on it, and Russia and the whole thing. Okay, so that's casting in Los Angeles. I've told you what I think is going on. We're pretty secure with our mail ballots, and I am not that bummed about our BMDs, though other people are. So now we have a hand-marked paper ballot to take care of that concern. And the only thing that can really hurt us is if they hack the electronic sign-in rolls at the voting centers, and then there will be a bottleneck and long lines. But it helps, by the way, to bring in your sample ballot or anything you have that has your name and address on it. I think the sample ballots now have a QR code on it. You give it to this electronic sign-in and they just scan it, and then you're all signed in. So the technology, it can hurt, it can help. But in case it's going to help, we should cooperate with it helping if we want to use that form of voting, because that's going to make the line go faster. Okay, so I now definitely want to hear.
What about the boxes? The drop-off boxes?
Yeah.
That's what I've been telling people to use.
I know. Yeah. I try to think like a Republican lawyer or a Republican fraudster. And my family was Republican, so I don't use that adjective, with complete bitter hatred. But I do try to think that way. And sometimes I just think, yeah, Dropbox just sitting there, won't be postmarked. I don't know. Sure. I'm sure they're fine. And if they're the most easy thing, great. I think at a vote center, I am not sure. Do you, Teresa, know if you bring your mail ballot to drop off at a vote center, are you going to use a Dropbox, or is it old school where we used to, as poll workers, sit
I just walked up and dropped it off in a box.
But you drop it off in the election box that we're using for all the other ballots too. It's just you drop it off in your purple envelope, right?
I don't remember if it was a separate box, but I didn't have to get in line. I just walked up.
Didn't have to get in line. Well, what I liked in the old days about dropping my voted mail, well, I never did it, but as a poll worker, seeing other people drop a voted mail ballot off, was they slid it right into the slot of the locked ballot box on which sat, the yes and S thing that you sent the ballot you were voting at the polls through to give you a second chance. Oh, you voted twice or you didn't vote at all. And we still basically, we have a locked ballot box, even though the BMDs have all their locked boxes, and that's where those ballots are going, and those will be collected at the end of the night. But there's still a locked ballot box, and I know it goes to Norwalk, and I know it's attended to that night. So I know if a mail ballot is dropped off in there, I know exactly the process of attending to it and recording that it's arrived. Drop boxes are new, and I haven't been down to the registrars, and I'm ignorant about what happens.
Is this the first
Maybe
year
I've
that
got
we're
a
using
question, Mike.
drop boxes?
No, I used them a couple of years ago,
Yeah,
or
because
primary last year.
Yeah, because I normally vote, go in and, I like to go to the polls, but this year, because of COVID-19, I'm not doing it. And I'm thinking about using the drop boxes rather than going into
The mail.
And there is a library near me, so I'm thinking that might be
It's probably fine. It's probably fine. If it's a library, if it's someone attending the drop box, I like that. If there's a human being who knows it's there. Somebody told me there were drop boxes outside of UCLA that the supposed attendant, couldn't.
But your preference is to just mail it in, just do it early enough.
As long as it's before, say, October 20th or October 21st.
Okay.
I wouldn't wait much longer than that. And, I got to say, LA County has proven its intentions to be good.
Yeah.
The execution is often naive, flawed, overlooks things. But I have not seen since 2006 or 7. I saw ill intentions, and then Deborah Bowen came in and she cleaned up the act, really. And then Connie McCormick left, and then Dean Logan came, and he was surrounded by some people that I'm really glad. IT department.
Mm-hmm.
The IT department was headed up by people that if they were IT specialists, I'm an alligator. Well, I almost am an alligator. I mean, they were not. They were not people that I would associate with being really good at computers.
Mimi?
I'm going to see if we have questions
Hello?
for LA,
Okay.
and then we'll go from there. Somebody has a
Okay.
question?
Yes, I have a question.
Who is it? I'm sorry.
It's Eva.
Hi.
Hi, it's Eva and David.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh,
Do you see us?
We can
Yep.
see your ceiling
The top of
fan.
your head.
Yeah, well, anyway, Mimi, at
Well,
Harvey Wasserman's meeting, you were pro postmark. I'm not sure if that's so much in LA and in California as it is in other states, but
Right.
I'm wavering between a postmark and the Dropbox. What's your preference between the two, would you say?
I know my post office people, so I'm going to use the post office just because, and because I can track the ballot. You can track the ballot even if you use a Dropbox. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other in LA.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Sign up for
All
ballot
right.
tracking. You can drop it in the box, and probably by the next day you'll see that it's in the office by Ballot Tracker. Do you know about that Ballot Tracker on lavote.net?
I went to Ballot Tracker and I declined because it wanted my birth date, and I did not put my birth date in, so I declined.
Okay. Just as a security of having your data everywhere?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
she didn't want them to know how old she was. Come
I was
on.
going to say, I think.
Didn't know how old I am. How old we are. We're old.
Good for the data, though. I like when they're going to find out how many people who are of a certain age did not vote for the guy who thinks he's got all the white people over 65. Okay.
Mike, you had a question or no?
Yeah, I had one other question. I'm not exactly sure what name I'm registered on, whether I use my middle initial or not. Do I just
Right.
use do I just use the names when I sign it that's on the ballot that was
You
mailed?
can find that out by checking your registration, Mike. Have you done that yet?
I tried, but I don't remember now how to do it. I signed up for ballot tracks.
Okay, go to lavote.net, check your registration. And then I had to do this too. Enter what you think you are and everything else, your street number, and see what comes up. They'll go like, no such person in our records. And then you go, oh, I used the wrong. That's how you find out. I finally, on my third try, find out the ridiculous amount of names I signed up.
It could conceivably be different than what the ballot is addressed and who the ballot is addressed to.
Usually it won't be. Your registration is pretty much what they're getting in touch with, but I would double check.
Okay.
If you have your mail ballot?
Yeah.
It should be that person it's addressed to, but enter that and see if it comes up.
Okay.
Ruth, you have a question?
I have a question, Teresa.
Sorry,
I have a
unmute.
question.
Let's do
Do you
Ruth
think
first.
it's better to put it in the mail, or can you bring it to your post office and physically hand it to them?
Either way.
Okay. It'll be postmarked if you bring it in, obviously,
It'll
right?
be postmarked faster, but the post office boxes that still exist have those things going. The last pickup is 5 p.m. or whatever, and it'll be picked up 5 p.m. It'll have a postmark that night. Otherwise, it'll be the next day. I mean, we're trusting these processes because LA has not had massive problems of blowing up post boxes and having other election obstruction on that level. And we have barcode tracking on the ballots for when they send out and when they receive back, and you sign up for the tracking. It means you can access the data. The postmark is just another thing. I'm going to do it only because I am worried, and I'm checking with these registrars to see if my worry is justified about unpostmarked ballots being a target of attack. But they won't be if they are also tracked by the county via a barcode. And I am assured that that's pretty much happening to every mail ballot in the United States. Then we have to worry that the county is not a best practices county, and that they're somehow going to find batches of ballots that have barcodes but no postmarks. And for that reason, just for practice, I'm going to see what happens to my mail ballot, but I'm going to mail it very, very early after I hear what you're discussing with the propositions, because I think they're somewhat confusing. And Jackie Goldberg isn't on Lila Garrett anymore. So anyway.
All right.
Yeah, so I would say you're in good shape anyway. And Mike Fowler just said, drop boxes have been used in San Diego for a long time. San Diego wasn't always a clean county in other respects, but I do think it's because the ballots are barcoded and you can track when they arrive. So nobody's making sure those ballots don't arrive in such and such a drop box. They're not. That kind of fraud isn't. It's too visible. It's not gonna.
Eva, you want to go?
David has a question.
Well, somebody else does too. That's right.
No, she said Eva. Go for it, honey.
Oh, yeah, David here. Every year, everybody is being recommended to go early. If you go to the post office, of course, go early always. But if you don't, always know. For example, I have several times, twice I've had DMV things be late because in Woodland Hills, the post office sends it to Santa Clarita for postmarking. And so I did it. Actually, I lost at least one day on that. And so it's risky to use to count on, you got to go early with the post office because that mark is not put on where you put it in necessarily unless you go through the line and ask them to put the date on it, which they will do if you go through the line. But they told me they wouldn't do it with things that have a, I went one time and I was doing a no stamp required thing. And They can't stamp it under that circumstance. Oh, you know that. Okay, then that's correct, even for the ballot. So the ballot
Yes.
can't be hand stamped either.
That's right. I
Don't
think
wait in line
that,
then.
But how do you get a postmark then?
It
right.
goes through the machinery. It'll get postmarked when it goes through the machinery, but not a hand stamp early.
And I remember Dean Logan saying that for years they were receiving ballots that had no postmark. And I think that's back before we gave the postage. I think putting, free postage for the ballot is fairly new. So there have always been these anomalies. They're not what we call wholesale election fraud anomalies, but they're concerns because they're little fraud holes that if you wanted to tear one open and exploit it, you probably could. But here now we have the barcode probably for that very reason, because they needed an alternative way to track the goings and comings of mail ballots that was not dependent on a postmark.
I have a question. I've read that California throws away, I think 100,000 ballots or something because there's something wrong with the signature or something like that. With ballot tracks, it says it'll let you know when it's received. Will it let you know if there's an issue?
Yeah, well, if it's received early enough, they do try to cure the ballot. There are staff and, seasonal temporary workers are who run an election everywhere. That's always been interesting to me. What kind of vetting do they do? I think I'll run the election. But anyway, seasonal temporary workers, they have them devoted to doing that. And they call you up. They also, and I thought maybe you had seen this, Teresa, if you ever went down, but I sat in front of somebody on a computer with a ballot and she had it under her magnifier or whatever. So the signature she was looking at was on one part of the screen, and on the other part of the screen was the signature on the registration card. And then she started scrolling. And there were other signatures. And that's when we asked, and I have since known, anything on record with the county is on signature file for the voter. So if they like how you did it on your, of course, license or a contract that you signed recently for work done or any kind of thing like that, they have a couple of choices. And if you didn't sign it at all, they're supposed to contact the voter. There's staff devoted. It's called coming in and curing your ballot. Now, with massive amounts of mail ballots, we're not sure. And with provisional ballots, if an election has been decided before they get to the provisionals, generally they won't call up. But we have a number, as you know, to call on that pink provisional slip to find out if our ballot has been counted, as is true with the mail ballot. And if not, why not? The answer is you didn't have a signature. Something was wrong with your signature. I think they're kind of liable if you can say, well, why didn't you get in touch with me?
Ruth, you had a question? Ruth? Or was that from earlier?
I have to unmute. You were talking earlier in different meetings about ways for us to participate in becoming, I think, part of the election board or an election group or something like that, and volunteering. And since a lot of us are of the age of majority, it turns out that it would be better to do that than be like a poll worker, less contact. What are you suggesting if we want to participate to kind of oversee or kind of watch to make sure things are legit?
Right. I think that's been institutionalized now. It used to just be called Judy Alter. That's still my answer, but I don't know if she's actively doing it. I think it's been institutionalized to the point where you could, at this point, call the registrar's number and say, who's doing citizen oversight? How do I get in to watch a process? And I think they've got somebody doing that. I mean, at least one staffer will have some sort of answer because they're trying to be more transparent. Now, if they have no answer and they're like, we don't do that, you'd better call the County Democratic Party. You know,
Perfect.
I have a solution.
Thanks.
CADEM, California Democratic Party, is offering a voter protection hotline, and I signed up to staff that hotline. So Ruth, if you want to join, I hope you will join us, but it starts October 22nd, and you have so many shifts, and you're on a hotline, which is fantastic.
Fantastic.
That's one way to go for sure.
Eva,
Okay.
is there a training for that? Because one thing that's going to happen, it used to be that the provisional voter, you know, I've been purged from the rolls, I'm not there. They're making me vote provisional because I didn't bring in my mail ballot and I never got it. All of those are resolvable now with same-day registration and canceling your mail ballot. If you get a call like, I couldn't sign in, then the electronic poll books have gone down, and then those calls are going to have to go to the registrar. I mean, it's worth it to call the party and go, I'm at a site where everything's gone wrong, so that the party knows about it. But those are not legally resolvable issues by, you know what I'm saying? I hope are they going to train you so you know to say, ask them for same-day registration? Don't, you know.
I would expect they would train us. I mean, I don't see how they could not train us.
Have they notified you and said, choose a time for your training?
Well, it begins October 22nd, so it's a little bit premature. It's only the 8th.
Okay, I just wondered, but they haven't told you, thank you for signing up, you will be required to do a 1 hour whatever online or something like that?
Not so far, but I'm
Okay.
waiting. I'm waiting.
Okay, okay.
I have a comment. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Really? You
Yes.
really can hear me.
Yes, Marilyn, right?
I think I did the right thing then. I pushed the right thing. Or did I push the wrong thing? No, I pushed the right thing. Anyway, I have a comment about the ballot.
Yeah.
Now on my ballot, this is the first year I've noticed this, that the president is on the very last page, on the far left side, a single column, and it's very easy to overlook because I had to put on extra heavy reading glasses to find it. Very unusual.
Why that is?
And it's very easy to overlook. I'm sure it's over for some people, they will not, well, they'll probably have to look and look, but it'll be easy to overlook it and not vote. I'm sorry, but
here's the reason they did that. I've sat in, by the way, there's a thing called the Community Voter Outreach Committee. I don't know if they're still having it, but anybody can join and say you represent Progressive Democrats of America. Hear everything the registrar is doing. They had meetings, and everybody.
What is it again? What did you say?
Community Voter Outreach Committee, CVOC, Community Voter Outreach Committee. That's where I started learning all this stuff, and it was another woman who told me about it. So that's something to know. Okay, why that is because everybody goes to vote for president. They're motivated, so they want to find that race, and they'll bitch if they don't. They don't all go to vote for their assembly person or the judges.
Mm-hmm.
And those candidates started to complain that local democracy was not working in their case. The only people who voted in those races were the special interests who had put the candidate up there in the first place, and they were duking it out, and the people never had a chance to weigh in. Well, of course, now we have a chance to weigh in, and we hardly know, in the case of judges, what the hell we're doing. It's so, but I understood why they did that. They want you to notice that there's other stuff that you're up for questioning and resolving, and we won't do it if we just walk in and vote for president and say, I don't care about the rest of it, I'm leaving.
Well, I've always had an issue with judges.
Oh, it's horrible. It's just horrible.
I
You know the best way to do judges? Go to the right-wing websites.
Yeah.
And whoever they recommend, don't vote for them. That's the way to do it.
You have to really research it, because a lot of times I would just look down the list and I'd see one recommendation. I'd say, oh yeah, okay, I'll vote for him. And for all I know, I was voting for somebody horrible, you know. And
exactly.
You just don't know. And especially if it's an incumbent. If it's an incumbent,
I know.
That's the worst, when you just check.
Well, two things. on your computer. LA Progressive is pretty good, but I don't think they have anything up yet. There's something called Judging the Judges, and that's pretty good. But the best thing to do, and LA Progressive told me to do this, go like Judicial Watch, or that's a really right-wing website about judges. There's probably some other, Federalist Society, maybe, local judges endorsed by the Federalist Society. If you see those guys, don't vote for them.
Don't vote.
Also Dorothy
Don't
Reich
vote for
and
a
Jennifer
right-wing
Tanner.
recommended judge.
Are you sure?
What?
Are you sure about that?
I would not judge. I would rather not vote at all than vote for a Federalist Society judge. They are owned lock, stock, and barrel by the right wing.
Yeah.
We know that Dorothy Reich and Jennifer Tanner have put out a list of recommended votes. If you want to look at their
Great.
website or their email, it's
And
Dorothy
if
Reich and Jennifer Tanner.
If you go to the
thank you.
if you go to the LA County Democratic Party website,
Mhm.
there's a thing that you can upload, and that has all the judges that they recommend. North Valley also does judges. They have a Facebook page, North Valley Democratic Club, and the LA Times, I believe, had all the judges recommended also. So I found at least 3 different places.
Well, you really
Now,
have
when I
to
looked
do
at the
it.
Facebook page for North, sorry?
What?
When I went to the North Valley Facebook page, it wasn't there yet, but they sent out an email if you're on their email list.
Okay.
Hey, Mimi,
Great.
do you remember the ones you said? First you said Community Vote Outreach Committee about that. Then you said LA Progressives, Judicial Watch. There was another one in there I missed that I liked the sound of it.
Judicial Watch and the Federalist Society are national right-wing constitutional originalist organizations.
Okay, good.
I don't know that I don't know if they get into local judge races, but if you were looking at judges, endorsements, it's a Google search, which I started today and didn't find stuff I wanted. So thank you, Teresa. Really, to go to our friends' websites and just vote for who they recommend is a good thing to do.
Yeah, and they do interviews ahead of time, and they really get into the details.
Did anyone get, there was one other one that was a positive one, it sounded like, that you mentioned.
LA Progressive.
Yeah.
LA County Democratic Party.
Yeah, I got that. It was before
LA
that.
Campaign. The Courage Campaign has a good one. Courage California.
They
You
mostly
said
do
judge
the
the
propositions.
judges. And you said judge the judges, right? Mimi, it's good.
There was a thing,
Yeah.
but it might have been only one time, Judging the Judges. Yeah.
Oh, that's it.
I don't know if they're still extant. They might have only been that 1 year.
Okay. Thank you.
You want to tell us national?
National voting stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm concerned about Lindsey Graham's race against Jamie Raskin. It looks like Jamie Raskin, who's black and is wonderful.
Harrison.
Not Jamie Raskin.
Jimmy Harrison. Yeah.
Jamie Harrison. I first met him at a thing. Jamie Harrison is wonderful. And South Carolina has some very confusing voter rules around the surrender rule, which means if you got a mail ballot, but you don't want to use it or it never came to you, what do you do? And in the old days, you had to show up at the polling place. And if you didn't want a provisional ballot, you had to go all the way to the county elections office and get a written affidavit that they have not received your mail ballot. And indeed, you never voted it. And you have to take that written affidavit back to the polling place. So you're spending all day running around. That was South Carolina in the past, meaning they're an obstructionist state, of course. Now they have e-poll books, just like we do. So you can supposedly find out right away, but they haven't changed their state laws and they haven't changed the laws that are on their voter education websites. So it's a little squirrely to me. I think a lot of people might be telling South Carolina voters you have to vote provisional. And then I'm worried that they'll dicker around about which provisional votes to count, and suddenly Lindsey Graham will somehow win because all the provisional votes were concentrated in the black areas. That's my paranoid scenario. And again, like all my paranoid scenarios, I just put it out there and I work with people in these states to make sure that it's not going to happen. And when I find people going, no, I don't know really what the law is anymore. When I find that kind of not surety, I am worried. So I'm a little worried about that. But again, it's all about provisional ballots at the polls, and the e-poll books should be taking care of it. So I keep emphasizing this because some technology has removed some of the worst stuff, which is creating a blizzard of provisional ballots that have signatures on the envelopes that can then be thrown out by dirty election boards or teams of lawyers who come in and decide they shouldn't be counted because the race is already decided. I hope South Carolina has a clean election, and that there really are people stepping up and saying, we are going to make our county have a clean election. I know we've scared the fraudsters, and they didn't want to do it that much anyway, and I don't think they really want to do it under these circumstances for this guy. But for Lindsey Graham, he must have a lot of friends in South Carolina, vicious. Everything I'm looking at is about signatures on mail ballots, and we're telling people match your license, match something that's on record at your county. Mail early if you mail at all. And if you drop off, make sure you're in a county where they track the ballot's arrival some other way, so that it's not just an unpostmarked ballot that somebody could challenge. We don't know when this arrived. I think if we can get on top of all that, and Oregon has, because they've always voted by mail, Colorado has, we're seeing a blue wave, and I think we might have various election systems by which it could happen. Some of it's thanks to technology, and some of it is thanks to awareness and voter education. I've never seen so much voter education in my life. Would you agree? Everything I hear, NPR and TV, they're talking about how you vote and what happens to your ballot. That never used to be the truth. And it's going to help the voter avoid falling into these traps. It's great. And yet we see those lines.
Yeah.
Well, there's also been a lot more people that have already voted at this time than have voted in prior years. So it's big.
Right.
We're going to have record turnout.
Record turnout.
Mimi?
Yeah.
I wonder whether you're going to see in this election the same hiccups that we had last time with the new voting system.
Some of us should be muted so that we're not.
Yeah, I'm going to mute everybody, so unmute yourself.
Okay. Somebody still. Okay, I'm up now, right, Teresa? All right. What were you asking me about LA? Now somebody's going to have to unmute and repeat the question.
I know that last election, the new voting system was full of glitches, terrible glitches, like, hour-long glitches. So can you address whether we're better off this time, I hope?
Yeah. I don't know. But one thing I do know is that the voter education about early voting was horrible when we rolled out our system. And the long lines were on election day. Because my husband was a poll worker for the 3 days before election day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I visited him and nobody was there. He sat talking to the other poll workers in this hall, and once in a while a voter trickled in. And then, of course, on election day, it was long lines.
I think part of the problem last time was everyone waited till the last minute.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know, because the voting centers were open, 2 weeks in advance? I went in, about a week or two beforehand and had no problem, because I figured if people waited till the last minute, it would be busy, but most people just waited till the last minute.
But even our friends would say, Super Tuesday on this election, March, what was it, 9th, 3rd, March 3rd, we're going to have to, Super Tuesday, we're going to have to. Nobody was thinking the way they are now.
Right.
I mean, this has been fantastic. Oh, I wanted to mention this too. Alan Minsky and Steve Rosenfeld, who's a really good election journalist, and I wrote an article called Voting Voting is a whole season, and it begins in August. To vote, and it's at 2020voterscalendar.org, 2020 voterscalendar, all one word, .org. We have every state, every rule, everything I've been talking about surrender rule, mail ballot. We have everything. And I'm proud to say we did it in June, and we were the first ones to talk about voting season. It's not a day, voting season, get a calendar, make a plan. And we got a lot of shares on Common Dreams, and it really got picked up. And
This was PDA?
PDA, well, it was PDA. It was my idea. Alan and Steve collaborated on. Steve really is amazing. And we published all his articles and our article from Common Dreams on 2020votercalendar.org. And we just started this voter education thing and collected, was a lot of research for every state, especially on the surrender rule, especially on stuff people weren't paying attention to, because we were told by registrars, you're paying attention to the right thing. Do this, it's necessary. Yeah. And so it happened, it was great, and PDA, yeah, that was me.
Great.
Talking to Steve. So it's great, and we said at the end, take this, steal this, use it, own it. We wanted to get to Stacey Abrams and all those organizations and LeBron James, and we told the Harvey calls about it, and there were many people on those calls, but it leaked down, it filtered down, and then that is the approach that I'm seeing now. Make a plan, it's a calendar, it's a season. Really, really important. So I think, to get back to LA, the glitches and the fact that there were uncertified things, and it's also, there are hackable aspects of our tabulation. And I see why people don't trust the QR code. And I see why people would rather hand mark than see just your choices on a ballot. But I'm not one of those people. I think we have a paper ballot that's easy to read. And I think voters should definitely look at it, and then it gets scanned and there are ballot images made of it. And the ballot image and the paper ballot have a matching identifier number. So later you can add up all the ballot images or look at them in a room projected on a big thing and count the votes for whoever. And then if you want to know whether anybody tampered with that file electronically, pull 701 and go look at the paper. And if 701 looks like ballot image 701, then you know the code was accurate, everything tracks. It's a lot of work, but we have the capacity in LA to do that. So the software and the glitches, I know they're fighting the BMDs in Georgia, that ES&S railroaded Brian Kemp into buying. Is it Georgia? Yeah, Georgia.
Yeah,
Stacey,
Brian Kemp.
Brian Kemp is Georgia.
I certainly don't trust Brian Kemp. I don't trust Georgia, and I don't trust ES&S. So I'm against those BMDs. I don't have the same feeling against the publicly owned LA system. And I really almost stand alone in my election integrity community about that. And only time will tell. And I completely understand they may want to get rid of the whole thing, but this year they have. We have all hand-marked paper ballots. Now we just have to worry about the tabulation. And it's the same tabulator for the BMD ballots and the hand-marked ballots. And they all do ballot images of both. So we got the ballot image thing going on. And we have the all hand-marked paper ballots. So I think we're pretty good in LA. We've got what everybody wants. And I don't fight fights that take energy, that don't help the voters. This year, I wanted to help the voters down south. I wanted to help Black voters down south, Stacey Abrams, NAACP, and voter education has done that. And Andrea Miller, PDA, ex-PDA executive director, moved into a technological thing and doing huge data systems. She's done more to restore votes for felons' rights. She's done more to contact people that have been purged and tell them check and make sure you've not been purged, re-register. She's doing phenomenal work, and everybody recognizes that. And again, she comes out of the PDA election integrity movement. So we can be really proud, and we must always be very nervous. And you don't have to love LA's new system, but you can get around it by hand marking a mail ballot this year. And we track the mail ballots on the outside. So my postmark thing, which is more for some other states that I'm worried about, we don't have to do that. Your drop boxes are probably okay. Certainly I would go where somebody is, a human being is near the drop box all day. Dropping it at a vote center is okay.
Yeah, I mean, last time I voted, when I voted at the voting centers, I must have missed something because everyone was complaining about them, and I found that it was fine for me.
Yeah, Larry was a poll worker, my husband, and people, he knew the system, and people didn't know that they thought they walked away with the ballot. It was their receipt because they just voted electronically. And he went, no, that's your ballot. That's going to be counted. You better look at that real hard. That's your vote. Yeah. It's going to be counted. And it could be hand counted if there's a question. And he said one person, an immigrant, because we had a lot of immigrant voters in our area, was almost in tears saying, I can't believe it. This is really my ballot. I never suspected that it would mean that much. I'm really casting a ballot.
Wow.
You know, the voters that Larry worked with loved it once they understood what was going on. And
well, maybe it was because I went to a lot of those training sessions that they were doing, or a couple of those training sessions.
Yeah. Did you for the poll workers? Or you went
for the poll workers, but for the voters.
Steve Rosenfeld, the journalist, and I, that's how we became friends. He came here for election day, and we went where Larry was working, and he watched it a long time. And he said, I get that if it's private software, I don't like it, but I'm seeing what this is not terrible.
Yeah.
Well, I'm concerned because after you vote, you put it back into the printer.
Yes.
And I don't know why you would have to do that unless they're doing something to it.
Yeah, I think they're separating the feed, but they did it, to make sure they didn't have two sets of gears that had to work. I think there was a certain amount of trying to streamline the machinery to reduce the chances of breakdown. But the only thing that could happen to our ballot by going under a printer head in LA is it would spray or leak on the QR code. It can't put in an extra vote, because if you've seen that ballot, it says, Joe Biden, no selection. Yes on Measure M, Measure R, no selection. They don't leave any space for you to cram in something other than what the voter wanted. It's spaced out so you can't do a phony vote. But the QR code, if you smush on it, the tabulator won't be able to read it. And what the tabulator will then do is spit it out the side into this I can't read this ballot tray. And those have to be looked at by human eyes and tabulated by hand. So again,
Mimi,
I'm not worried about that. Yeah.
Do we have to be concerned about the secrecy envelope here in California?
We should. I would definitely be concerned about that. The naked ballots thing is it Pennsylvania, right? Because they've just ruled that if your ballot is not in its secrecy envelope, it can't be counted. Now, there's a reason, an old-fashioned reason for that: vote selling. They want to make sure that when it comes into the election office, Uncle Joey isn't opening up and going, oh, he voted the way I wanted him to do. He's going to get that $25 tonight. These are old problems that were addressed by, we have to include a secrecy envelope and we have to separate the process. So now it gives vicious vote suppressors a little regulation way to suppress the vote. So it's kind of ridiculous, but the derivation of why that secrecy envelope exists, you can see, oh yeah, maybe it's better than opening the envelopes and going, oh, I got Mimi Kennedy's ballot here. Oh, look who she voted for. Go tell her boss.
Ruth, did you have a question, or is your hand up from earlier? Ruth? Might be from earlier. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, what's the state that you have to have someone prove that you've signed on your envelope or something?
Including in some states, a notary public.
Witness.
That was it, yeah.
I know for sure North Carolina, this is all, it's left my head. Pardon me if I don't have that all anymore in my head. Southern states are bad in general. Yeah. But 2020voterscalendar.org, if you guys just go to that site and you've got a map of the United States and just click away and you will see where the problems are and what, because we listed, you know, their deadlines and we went into the surrender rule. Yeah. And if you really want to have fun, Verified Voting has a map called the Verifier. Again, you'll see a whole map of the United States and the states have colors and they're coded. And it's like, there are still states with electronic voting and no paper trail. And you'll see which ones they are. So that's why when you hear that, you know, Donald Trump and the Republican senator or whatever won there, you're like, yeah, well, what are you going to do about that? They got nothing.
Yeah.
And, you know, Brad was just shoved off Twitter tonight or today.
Was just what on Twitter?
Brad, he tweeted something about the Georgia, I think it's Georgia, maybe North Carolina, but about these BMDs. And he said the judge we're trying to get rid of these 100% unverifiable touchscreen machines. And I know that's probably why they took him off, because it confused me and many people when he called LA 100% unverifiable touchscreen voting. People thought we didn't have a paper ballot anymore. And I think he said the same thing about the BMDs. Again, notorious ES&S, but so I don't like them either. But I feel bad because I think probably that's why somebody suggested Brad not, you know, be shut down on Twitter. I couldn't see anything, nothing else is, there's nothing wrong with the tweet. He was just giving facts about a court case and they needed to be known. But because there was this, anyway, 100% unverifiable, I begged him not to use that.
All right,
that's how I feel about everything, that my friends don't do something that gives those motherfuckers a chance to get in and eliminate you or your vote. You know, be so careful. We need.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate in California. You know, we may have some problems, but I think that we're going to generally, it's going to work out. At some of these other states that are, especially the ones controlled by Republicans, because you know. The voting, and I think if there was a fair election and everyone got the vote and there's no voter suppression, Biden would win by a landslide.
Absolutely.
You know, but the problem is, you know, we know some of the things that the Republicans are going to try to do. You know, that's why I like PDA's strategy of trying to win on election night with those three states, because post-election is a second aspect. We've got to be prepared to do what people are going to tell us to do, and I don't hear a lot of planning from the Democrats. I mean, Biden and Harris keep saying, well, the voters will vote and Trump will leave, and it sounds completely naive to me. You've got to be prepared. I mean, they should at least say, well, we've got our own attorneys, and that's only one part of it. So watch for the post-election. That's all I'm saying.
That's why they're saying vote early, because in fact the Democrats do know what they're going to try, and the only way that we can circumvent it, protect our ballots, is early postmark, early and vote by election day. They want in person on election day. They're really worried about a mail ballot getting there so late that they will be contested. And
Yeah.
so that's, so either way, if I were in one of those crappy states, I would take my mail ballot with me and I would go to an early voting center as soon as I could. And if the
Yeah.
line was too damn long, I would vote my mail ballot if I had one, and drop it off or drop it in the, I drop it off if I knew it was being tracked. And that is the research I'm doing right now. I'm waiting for a guy to get back to me who I think will know how many ballots have a reception barcode that the minute it comes into the office, dropped off without a postmark, it still has a time date stamp.
Well, the bottom line is that we all have to stand by and be ready.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the bottom line.
Yep. Yep. And if you want to observe any, but I think observing in person is they're not going to want a whole bunch of people coming in under COVID, standing around in crowds watching this system.
Hardly.
Yeah.
Of
So
course.
So you want to, if you want to be on top of it, I would say look at the verified voting map and find out what the election system is of the state you're worried about and the race that you're worried about, and go to 2020voterscalendar.org and find out some of the rules that might trip voters up in the states that you're worried about and the races you're worried about. And Jamie Raskin is being asked to make the Election Assistance Commission, which I now think is only 4 commissioners, evenly split, to remind them digital records are records. The election code says 20701, USC 50 20701 says all records must be preserved. That means digital. Make it national. And then to prevent civil unrest, you can prove the election with the ballot images without having this 10-week struggle in the court to get the paper ballots and get them to count the paper ballots statewide so all the ballots are treated the same. We can't do that, but ballot images would streamline that whole process. It is
Well, that's good if those ballot images work the way that you're supposed to, because one of the strategies that they've talked about is that they're going to do both in some of the states that Biden wins. If there's Republican governors, they're going to do, or even if there's not, they're going to do bogus challenges to the ballots to try to delay the states from getting it to Congress on time, and maybe throw it into a contingent election where no one
the bogus challenge is going to be before those ballots are counted. That's why I'm screaming about postmarks.
Yeah.
The biggest bogus challenge is throw out anything that doesn't have a postmark, because we don't know when it came in. And all you need is some dirty staffers to hide 1,000 ballots behind the piano or the coffee machine.
That's why I'm saying we need to mail it in rather than the drop boxes.
Well, I'm thinking in some of those lousy states, I would do that, but that has to be very early mailed in, because the other thing they might have people in place to do is slow walk your ballot.
And I think I'm sorry, go on. I think some of the other states, there's probably been more sabotaging of the post office. I don't think that's happened too much here, but
that's right. So, and that has to do with how long is the grace period. But Ian Sancho from Florida, now retired, assured me most mail ballots are tracked. The registrars have to do it because it's such an obvious, Trump, who doesn't know his ass from his elbow about anything. Oh, these ballots could be. Steve Rosenfeld has, no, it's not. Jim Soper has a wonderful email. I'll send it to you, Mike, so you can do. He's saying, how hard it would be for a foreign country to make up these mail ballots. They have barcodes on the outside. The envelopes have to be perfect. They have to have all different races for all different precincts. Are you kidding me? They can't do all that. It's a massive, detailed undertaking. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah, but if you're one of if you're one of his useful idiots, you're going to be subject to his Goebbels technique.
Of course, because it's immigrants and horrible enemies that can do anything, and God, who can cure him of COVID, can make China make all our mail ballots look phony. It's crazy, but the ballot image thing is real, and I do think that if the Election Assistance Commission understood that it could circumvent a long and growing firestorm of violent and vicious feeling or a strategy of legal plus militia thing, if they could just say, here's the ballot images, it
Yeah.
would be so great. And why don't they do it? That all of them have resisted in Florida, these local people. So they've got to be told by the nation, you can't destroy those records. And this year, more importantly than ever. And that hangs in the balance. It's mid-October. We're trying to get Jamie Raskin to do something, and we're trying to get, but he's hard to get a hold. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Could you reiterate something for me?
Yeah.
Maybe it's past my bedtime, but or I didn't hear right. Does every state have the imaging?
Just about. John Brakey says
I'm learning.
90% of the nation, 90% of the nation. South Carolina has imaging. North Carolina has imaging. Most of them do, because you cannot count a ballot. Nobody, except some people in New Hampshire now, sit around and count their ballots by hand. They have to be counted on computer, and most of the new scanners make a picture of the ballot.
Why didn't I know this? I'm very.
They call it in the weeds. So I try to talk to people like, oh, Mimi, don't get in the weeds.
No, but I mean, I really did not know that. And
I know.
I'm pretty smart and astute and political.
I know. Well, let me tell you something. If you go to verified voting, if you ever see DS 200 or DS 850, DS means digital scanner. A digital scanner is making a digital ballot image. If you see OS, optical scanner, that's just reading the paper with laser lights, you know, like a CD, like, oh, that's dark, that's a vote, that's light, that's a non-vote. They don't make DS, but if you see the ESS DS80, that's a digital scanner, they've got ballot images. They're just not saving them. The registrars aren't saving them. The ridiculous, I'll say one more thing, and I know you all have to get on with your lives, but in Florida, they said we can't save the ballot images because we take, they scan at the precinct, okay? Much like we used to have in LA, you put your little thing through the it sucks it in, and it would take a ballot image in under the ES and SD DS 850. It takes a ballot image. So then the votes go on a memory stick, right? That you take out of the scanner at the precinct, and you send that to the central registrar, who then puts the memory stick in the central tabulator, and all the votes from the memory stick add up, and you've got the votes. Okay. The ballot images are created at the precinct and will have to be saved on the memory stick. So there's a choice: save the ballot images, don't save the ballot images, or save the write-in ballot images. And the registrars tell the precinct people, don't save the ballot images. Because why? Because ES&S only gave us a USB stick with, 4 gigabytes of memory. And all the ballot images would take like 16 gigabytes of memory, and they're memory sticks. We can't just get one at Staples. They're ES&S memory sticks programmed to go into their tabulators. It's got very expensive programming in it. And so for ES&S to change out all our memory sticks from, 4 gigabytes to 16 would cost $290 per USB stick. So Judge, this would mean with all our precincts that we'd have to spend whatever, $16,000, $14,000. They were saying $1 million more on the election. These lawyers were kind of making it up, but they were having a financial argument about we can't possibly afford our vendor's price to buy a memory stick that will save the images. And of course, I was saying, wait a minute, the vendor sold you equipment that was supposed to be standardized to meet all the HAVA requirements. Well, it's a federal law to keep records. So if the feds say we got to keep the records, it's up to the vendor to give you a bigger memory stick. That's their equipment that's supposed to be compliant. That's how they sold it to you. We have HAVA compliant equipment. But that never even came up. Something else happened. As you know, they said we will keep the ballot images if we have to do a recount. When we scan them the second time, we'll keep the ballot images. That's what we'll do. Meanwhile, if somebody wins decisively in the first scan, we're not going to keep the ballot images. And you'll have to come
Mimi,
back and recount. Yeah.
Mimi,
Yeah.
could you talk to the Electoral College for a moment?
Okay.
The electors?
About it? Yeah.
Yeah. Where are we?
It's Tom Hartman does that really well. I can't do it better than he, but I know there's a scenario by which if the election is thrown into confusion, the state legislature can appoint the state electors.
Yeah, I could probably speak to that a little bit.
Okay. You know what? It's 8:18.
Yeah.
You're going to say that. I do have to leave, but I look forward to the minutes because I want to know what you're going to say about the propositions. Okay.
Oh, well, we'll have it on video.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
I'll send out the link.
Thank you, everybody. And
Okay, thank you, Mimi. Really appreciate it. Very
Thanks, Mimi, for all your
Thank
work.
you, Mimi.
Thank you, Mimi.
Thank you, Mimi. Goodbye.
Okay.
All right, well, let's just cover a couple things real quickly.
Oh, you were talking about the Electoral College?
Well, I don't know, do we want to go into that now, or do we want to do it when we talk about, the PDAs get out the vote? Maybe we would talk about it then.
Okay, as long as we remember.
Okay, I'll write it down here. Anyway, just on our normal things, on the IoT reports, there's not a lot to report. Teresa, you and I were on Dr. Bill's healthcare call this last Sunday, which normally I'm not on, but I wanted to listen to it because they were highlighting Angelica Duenas on it. And I really don't remember too much about what's going on. I think at this point we need to concentrate on the election, and even Medicare for all, we should, we're not going to get anything done before the election anyway. Let's get Biden elected and then pick back up on that and the Green New Deal. But Angelica Duenas is on the national website now for PDA's national website. So there's been some interest that I don't think that Teresa and I were really aware of, because
Yeah, I didn't know that.
yeah, I know our chapter endorsed her, and all of a sudden National is talking about her. They have her on the website. They've mentioned her in a couple of their PDA meetings and presentations. And they had her speak on the Healthcare Not Warfare call that Dr. Bill did on Sunday. So just wanted to mention that. And Teresa, unless you remember anything else about the call,
Yeah, I just wanted to comment a couple things. Angelica, she's running for Congress in CD 29, and most of us are in 30. So, but if you have any friends in that district, right now it's represented by Tony Cardenas. He's not on a co-sponsor on Medicare for All or the Green New Deal. She supports both. And what is really, Alan Minsky has pointed out, is that that district had the most percentage-wise Bernie votes, at least in Southern California. I forgot if he said California or Southern California.
Yeah.
So here they have this, voter base that is very progressive, and yet they have a very conservative Democrat representing them, and which she has not much money, so it's like people don't know about her. So if you can help out with her campaign, that would be great. I'm going to try, and she's got stuff, I think, on Friday that I'm going to try and help out with. Also, they had on that call Dr. Robert Pollin, and he is the one that did the economic impact statement for both Pramila Jayapal's Medicare for All bill and Bernie Sanders' bill. And he was telling us facts and figures. He was very good. But basically, we would save a ton of money if we went to Medicare for All. And he was very conservative in the way he figured out how much money we would save. So we would probably save even more than he thought, is what he was saying. So it was a very good presentation.
Yeah, yeah. And then on the Educate Congress letters, I didn't do anything this last month, and there's not going to be a letter this month. So there's nothing really to report there unless someone happened to drop a letter. You know, I normally do it to Sherman's office, and like I said, I didn't do it last month, or this month, or whatever. And I don't know that anyone did it to Cardenas's office, because those are the two places, the two Congress people that we have letter droppers for, is Sherman and Cardenas. So there's nothing to report there. And then just wanted to talk a little bit, you know, Teresa and I wanted to talk a little bit about PDA's national strategy. You know, PDA is pushing to get Biden elected. You know, he's not our most progressive candidate, but he is, you know, he's got some good policies, certainly better than Trump. We all want to get Trump out of there. PDA is going to be doing get out the vote calls for Biden, as well as our progressive Senate candidates and senatorial and congressional candidates. And what they've come up with is a strategy that kind of ties into the whole post-election concerns. And that is, there's the three swing states that last presidential election went to Trump, you know, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And they're in play now, and I believe Biden is doing pretty good in them, but it's, you know, it's not a slam dunk. But there's also 3 or 4 other states, and on those states, their vote by mail ballots can't be counted until after the polls close. So we're not going to have the results of them on election night. Whereas Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida, Arizona, North Carolina.
Florida, for sure. I forget which Carolina.
Yeah, it was Arizona and Florida do start counting their votes. They can count their votes beforehand, and so can Texas. And Texas is really neck and neck right now. So they're going to be concentrating on those first 3 states and maybe Texas, and they're going to make calls there to try to get Biden to win in those 3 states, because their belief, PDA's belief, is that if Biden wins those 3 states, he could win on election night, and that would, you know, kind of negate the scenario that could come up that Trump could be winning on election night because the vote by mail ballots haven't been counted. But as they start getting counted, the election will start turning towards Biden. Because like I said earlier, I think if we have a free election and a fair election, Biden is going to win pretty much by a landslide. But even if it takes a little while for that, you know, Trump can start calling hoax and rigged election, try to get his people out on the streets, and do that strategy. So if we can win on election night, and we started touching on that, that would certainly help, you know, prevent that scenario. Of course, Trump is pretty creative. He could still come up with other things, but it would certainly weaken that particular strategy. So PDA is calling some of their members and asking them to volunteer and to make calls into those states. So if you get a call from a PDA person and they want you to make calls, if you've got some time, you know, please sign on to do it, because they want to make sure PDA members are going to get out and vote, and also see if they can volunteer to make calls into those states and to make calls for other progressive candidates.
Now, we reached out to several of you, and so we got your names and phone numbers. But if anyone else would like to volunteer, what we'll be doing, as he said, the first calls are going to be really easy, because you're just calling fellow progressives that are signed up in our database. Is there someone who, if you haven't been approached by us, like,
I'm gonna say goodbye because it's past my backache time.
oh, okay, sorry about that, Gary.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Talk to you later.
Feel better. Yeah, take care.
If you could raise your hand if you would like to make phone calls. What they're asking for the first off is just an hour's worth of commitment. If anybody could raise their hand in the raise hand under participants, that would be great.
And remember, like Teresa said, you're calling other PDA members. So number one, they're going to be more in line with your views. So you're not going to have to convince them generally, number one, or they'll be less convincing. Number two, they'll probably be better informed than the average voter. So like Teresa said, if you could at least make those calls, they would be easier calls than if you're calling the general public. So like, again, as Teresa said, raise your hand if you're interested in doing it.
And if you're not sure, oh, thank you. Oh, is that David? We got Eva already. Is that David also?
It's Diane. I need to talk to you, Teresa.
Oh, okay. Go
I
ahead.
got a call from Michael Fox.
Mhm.
We would do it, and they selected us for tonight at 6 o'clock. So
They're
there's
telling you what time?
tonight at 6
There
o'clock.
wasn't, yeah.
And there's no
There was
way
a-
that I could do that. So we're going to do it on the 10th of October.
Okay. I thought you could pick your time.
No, they gave us two selections.
Okay. Well, in the email that Mike Fox set out to send out, you're right. There was a conflict with our meeting because it was at 6 today. You could send him an email and just say you couldn't make the call and reschedule when you can
That's what
make
we
it.
have to do.
Ava and David, do you have your hand up for volunteering?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes,
David?
both of us.
All right, great.
We're
Well-
in the same call, Teresa.
Okay.
Yeah, I see you both, kind of, sort of.
Now, we already submitted your name, Eva, to Mike Fox, so he should be contacting you.
All right, great.
Okay.
And if you don't like the computerized system, what you can do is get a printout, and it'll give you a list of names. So from what I'm hearing, that they're supposed to be, very accommodating for us.
Yeah.
So let's see.
And
Do you think Mike Fox will send out an email twice? I think I did.
yeah. And if you don't hear from him,
Hello?
you can always
I was saying, I think.
Go ahead.
you could always email Mike Fox at mikefox@pdamerica.org and tell him you're from Progressive Democrats of San Fernando Valley and you would like to make calls. And he'll set you up. He's works 24 hours a day. And he's one of the only people I know that likes to make phone calls. So
I'll put his name in.
Could you repeat the email?
I'll
Now
put
you
it in
want
the
to
Repeat the
chat.
email, please.
okay, Teresa's going to put it in the
Oh,
chat.
chat. Okay, great.
And then I'm going to move to a couple other things that kind of tie in a little bit to the post-election and to the electoral college.
It's in
And
the chat. It's also in your email that was an invite for this meeting.
yeah, okay.
For my
So, I mentioned briefly about the post-election. And, we know the Republicans are the ones trying to rig the election. They've got plans for after the election if Trump loses, and they have, various strategies. And one of I kind of lost my train of thought, but a couple of the things that they might try to do is challenge enough of the ballots and enough of the states, and I alluded to this earlier, to prevent the states from submitting the results of their election to Congress by the due date. I think it's December 3rd or whatever. And if they're not submitted by, if enough states don't submit their electors vote to Congress on time, it could end up that no one gets 270 electoral votes. And in that case, the vote goes to the Senate for the vice president and to the House for the president. And I'm not sure how it works in the Senate, but in the House, it's the newly elected legislatures will decide on how they're going to vote for president. And each state will only get one vote. It's not like they get one vote for every representative. They just get one vote per state. So right now, if it stays the way it is with the state legislatures being controlled by the different parties, there's 26 Republican states and 24 Democratic states. So if they can create a contingent election, then, and it goes to the House, if that breakdown is maintained, then then they would elect Trump, even though Biden may have won the popular vote. There's another strategy that could be tried that's been talked about, and that is, if they don't do the strategy that I just mentioned, the Constitution says that the states will determine how the electors are selected. And right now, I believe all of the states, most if not all of the states, have passed laws saying that their primary elections will determine who the electors are. But if the states change that rule, change the law, then they can select them in a different manner. So if in a primary that's controlled by a Republican state shows that Biden won, the state legislature could repeal the existing law and say that there was fraud, and they're going to select their own slate of electors, and they would select electors that would vote for Trump. So those are just some of the things. How likely it is, I don't know. Are they conspiracy theories? I don't know. But that's some of the things we should watch out for. And PDA is not actively thinking about the post-election. They're concentrating on the strategy, for the election itself. But they're part of an alliance that was started with by Move On and by Indivisibles, called Protect the Results. And I don't know exactly what they're going to be doing. You can go to their website and check it out. But they are planning a strategy for post-election shenanigans and and attempts to steal the election by the Republicans and that type of thing. I mean, I'm just really disappointed in the Democrats' response. Now, maybe they've got something planned and they're just not saying it. But I've seen Biden, I've seen Jill Biden, I've seen Kamala Harris asked about, the Republicans are going to have their attorneys ready to go. What are you guys doing? They said, well, if Joe wins, Trump is going to leave office and it's not going to be a problem. And they could at least say that we have our own attorneys. They don't even say that.
They have a ton of attorneys. They have more attorneys than they've ever had, is what I've heard.
Okay.
So,
well,
and also,
I haven't heard the candidates say it, so I hope
they may
you're
not
right.
have said it personally, but I've seen it several times. Also, PDA is a member of the Protect the Vote coalition.
Yeah,
so
I mentioned
we may
that.
not be focused on it, but we are definitely aware of it. And Alan Minsky is
Mentioned that.
well aware of it and very involved with other groups.
And I did mention that also earlier, that they're part of that PDA is part of that alliance. So Teresa's right. Yeah. But anyway, so there was something else I was going to say, but it now slipped through my mind. So I'll leave it at that. So that kind of gives a little bit of discussion on the Electoral College that, Eva was asking about earlier. So the key thing is to be aware, keep your eyes open, don't assume everything is resolved on election night, even if Biden wins. And if and if he's losing, don't assume that he's lost, and just, be prepared. Hopefully, people, someone will come up with a plan and we can take part of it. And one of the things I remember one other thing I just want to mention. I would love to see Biden and the Democrats strongly state that it's the Republicans that are trying to rig the election, not the Democrats, despite what Trump is saying, and that Republicans are enabling them. We need to vote all Republicans out, because Trump couldn't be doing what he's doing without them putting party over country. And that if we feel that the election was rigged by the Republicans, we have our own plans and we may not accept the results. So I'm just throwing that out there. That's just my personal thought. Anyway.
I'd like to add a couple things. When we talk about conspiracy theories, the CIA came up with that term to minimize, I guess, people who thought of stuff that the CIA was involved with. So anyway, right now, Pennsylvania, the legislature has like some kind of an electoral commission, and they are looking at picking their own electors. Whether they go through with it or not, we'll see. But it's pretty serious. And I'm understanding also that Republicans are meeting in Washington with the states that they run and are trying to come up with plans to keep Trump in office. So, this is pretty serious stuff. If Pennsylvania's legislature, which is Republican, picks the electors, the Democratic governor can challenge it, and he can pick his own electors, and then they would have to go to a court, and eventually would probably go to the Supreme Court. And if we have Amy Coney Barrett on it, we kind of know what the answer might be.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons they're pushing so hard for her. That, and to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. So, so there's a lot of things that they're looking at, whether they'll try them. If it's a blowout, they may not try anything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Alan doesn't think that they're going to try, and I don't necessarily agree or disagree with him. I mean, he's certainly much more knowledgeable than I am. But Tom Hartman did say that there's been discussions about Republicans overturning the law that the primaries will choose the electors. And he said that in 2000, Jeb Bush was approached and was willing to sign a law repealing the primary vote if his brother lost in court. So I think it's a possibility. We just don't know. So
I feel we can't.
Yeah, go on.
The Republicans, and especially Trump, will go so low that we can't even figure out what they're going to do ahead of time. So we need to figure out the worst things we can now to be ready, because I keep getting amazed by stuff that happens. I'm like,
yeah. And one last thing I just have to throw out there, because it's really interesting to me how people are talking about, we've got to save our democracy. And I agree with them, the spirit of that, because, elections are not the only thing in a democracy, but they're obviously a key element. But I mean, our democracy was already pretty weak even before this, but now we're facing, an autocratic fascist, getting reelected. So anyway, anyone else have anything to say to add to that? Teresa, anyone else have any thoughts about that?
anyone?
Okay.
It's just a great discussion. Thank you. Thank you, all of you.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah. So, Teresa, do we want to move on to the ballot measures now?
Sure. We were just thinking of if anyone has any questions about ballot measures, if there's this particular one you want to go over, or I was thinking maybe talking about 15, 16, and 21, because I do have the League of Women Voters slides that I can show you guys. So is there anyone that wants to look at particular ballot measures, or should we just pick a few, or we're supposed to end in about 15 minutes? So.
Has anyone looked at Dorothy Reich's recommendations?
You know what, I have, no. Has she sent out emails on those, Eva?
That came out today.
Okay, I'll check her.
Her and Jennifer Tanner got together.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually looked at them, and they were pretty much the same as what I think the LA Democratic Party had for the propositions. I thought she was voting yes on the one about enforcement of, I'll have to talk to her. I had a feeling that she misprinted one. Anyway, I'll look at it later.
Well, let me ask you this. Before we go on to those three, can you do a screen share of the League of Women Voters, and we can just go through them and just see how, we don't have to have any discussion on it, but maybe just show what the League of Women Voters is recommending, so that if people want to go by that, they can make some notes.
My slides don't show that. They have,
Oh, okay.
the League of Women Voters has an educational area and a political area.
I don't want to see the League of Women Voters, because they don't take a stand. I'd rather listen to somebody else who's been through it.
Okay,
already.
you're right. You're right. That's what
I think the League is immaterial at this
Okay.
point.
And
That's what
also,
Teresa said.
in my email, well, actually I didn't. I sent it to someone else. Sorry. LA Democratic Party has a really good list. California Democratic Party has a list of the statewide ballot measures. The LA Democratic Party, we really liked it because it also had the judges. So let me go through and just show you. Do you want to do real quickly all of them, or just 3 or 4 of them, or what do you guys want to do? Any opinions?
Look at all.
Yeah, go through the whole list.
Go through them. Go through
Okay.
all of them.
Yes,
All right,
no,
I'm
yes,
gonna
no,
share
yes,
the
no, and
screen.
that's it.
So, see how this works? Let's see.
I think we should all give thanks to Teresa for her great technological skills, and also to Mike Thaler for all his work on setting our meetings up.
Well, actually, I'm lost. Let's see.
I agree. This is Ruth, and I also want to thank Mike for all the parties that you had for us to watch things, and I'm really sad that COVID came along.
I know.
Okay, I got it. Let's see if I can get to the right spot now. All right, share screen. All right.
Woohoo!
Women voters?
It's probably online.
Everybody see it?
Yep.
Okay. All righty. Okay, so there's 12 initiatives. We'll just go through them real quick. 14 authorizes bonds continuing stem cell research. And it's going to be $5.5 billion in new bonds. We passed a similar initiative in 2004 for $3 billion in bonds. Can everybody read it?
Yeah.
I don't have to, okay.
So what's their view on it?
Most of the organizations I looked up say yes. We were discussing at North Valley Democrats, and we thought that the federal government will probably, if it's under Biden, will probably support stem cell research. And since we don't have a lot of money with the COVID and everything, we suggested that people vote no. But most of the other organizations do say yes. Okay, so this is what the supporters say. And I heard today that some of the treatment that Donald Trump has gotten is from stem cell research that was illegal under George W. Bush.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it that cocktail, Genexer? What was it?
I think it was one of the mono, whatever it was. Yeah.
It's Regeneron monoclonal antibodies.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, this has quite a few supporters.
Can we move on?
Sure.
Hey, can I say something about that?
Sure.
I have a friend of mine who sends out, says no on this. It's mostly giving money to private corporations or private research. So,
Yeah, I'm leaning toward no. I think that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I'm just going to say that if the Howard Jarvis people vote no, then it's kind of like, okay, I'll vote yes.
That's usually one of my factors, but not the whole thing. All right, 15. This is one I have notes on. It increases funding for public schools, community colleges, local government services by changing tax assessment of commercial and industrial property. If you notice the ads, they're talking about farms. It does not touch agricultural property.
Basically, what it does is it allows commercial properties now that don't have to be reassessed until they're sold, that are over $3 million. It allows them to be reassessed, I think, to market value. So that's how they're going to, get more revenue. Because big corporations like the oil companies, like Disneyland, they're all paying taxes based on very low valuations of their properties.
And they don't even sell properties. What they do is they lease them to other people so that they can pay the lower property taxes, right?
Yeah.
Well, yes.
So this would raise a lot of money for schools and local governments. And just about every good government group and Democratic club is saying yes on this one. There's Howard Jarvis, so you have to vote yes. All right. And there's another one with property taxes on 19. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so 16 is another important one. Most people are advocating for a yes vote. I have a bunch of supporters for that one. This allows diversity as a factor. It's not the whole thing in public employment, education, and contracting decisions. So in the state of California, it used to be that schools would admit people and part of the calculation was what race, what sex they were.
Yeah,
You have a question?
No, I'll let you finish on 16 and then I'll add something to it if you don't cover it.
Shirley, did you have a question?
No, I just want to say I'm voting no on 16 for
Why?
for good reasons.
Why? Why?
Oh, because number one, we haven't had it for 24 years. And what it does is overturns the constitutional amendment that we voted in 24 years ago against, against preferential treatment for Blacks and women and et cetera, because the differential treatment is coming through now. I mean, in the paper, we just had this woman that was given the Nobel Prize for chemistry. Women are being recognized, Blacks are being recognized more so than before. And what happens is that there's a generation in 24 years, a generation of white young people, young uneducated men basically, who resent this preferential treatment for women and Blacks. And in a way, you can't blame them. They think that they're being put upon. And so I think then they join these right-wing organizations and become anti-government because they feel they're left out. So I am voting no against this. I hope that we don't have this kind of situation again.
Again,
We can't have preferential treatment.
it's
of
not
women for
preferential.
blacks
It's
and
one
leave out
factor
everybody else. We've
which
gotten
allows
diverse-
diversity. If
We've
you look at
gotten the diversity right now. There's diverse, the incoming freshman year for the UC schools is tremendously diverse, and that's in the public sector. In the private sector, Kaiser Permanente with their new medical school, I mean, it's so diverse. I mean, everybody is looking for a diversification, and so I don't think we need this, and I think it would be very harmful.
If you look at the numbers of people who are enrolled in colleges compared to now and to back then before this law was passed, the amount of Latino and Black students has really gone down.
No,
nowhere near the percentage.
They had an article in the paper just 3 days ago
favor?
on the diversity of the UC.
All right, let me read who's in favor of it. Diane, did you want to say something?
I don't care who's in
I
favor.
just want to say I totally agree. I totally disagree with what Shirley's saying. I think it needs to be restated and reiterated.
No way.
And let me just mention that,
They have more right-wingers.
yeah, you know, what it does say that a no vote on this is what the booklet says, that a no vote says that the current ban on the consideration of race, sex, color, ethnicity, and national origin in public education, public employment, and public contracting would remain in effect. So right now, they are not considering.
Race has always been a partial element, not
It
a
is
whole
not now.
element. And what
It's
you're going to
against
get
the
now
law.
is
There's a ban on
more
it.
quotas.
There's a ban on considering it.
Okay.
No,
Quotas?
there's no ban on
Can
it.
I add?
Go ahead.
That same
Who's that?
friend who sent it, he agrees with yes on this. Yes.
I'm
on
sorry, who does?
Oh, a friend of mine who's active in the Sierra Club and puts
Oh,
out
okay.
his own recommendations. I wouldn't say the Sierra Club is that. I'm just saying a friend of mine sent a. I
Okay.
shouldn't say active in Sierra Club because that implies Sierra Club. It's not Sierra Club and Sierra Club endorsement. I'm just saying.
Got it.
A list I trust is
All right.
yes on 16.
We are only one of 9 states that ban affirmative action as a factor. It's not the full thing. Quotas are unconstitutional according to the Supreme Court. So we are not going to quotas. And the people who support it, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, NAACP, LA Times, the California Democratic Party, against Ward Connerly, who did the original amendment, Republican Party of California, Darrell Issa, Bob Huff, Tom Campbell, several Republican legislators. There's no Republicans there are no Democrats on the list of people against it. So I would rethink that. All right, 16, or is that's one we just did?
17.
17, restores right to vote after completion of prison term. So if they're on parole.
Said 16 is a yes.
17.
This is 17 now.
Oh, no vote is keep the ban in effect.
And that same list I'm telling you about, Teresa, is a yes on this.
Yeah, most groups are. Quite a few states allow parolees to vote, so it's not something new. So again, the Democratic clubs have said yes on this one. I only looked up the supporters for 3 of them. I wasn't sure what we were going to do tonight. All right.
Okay,
Any discussion on that, or are we good?
we're good.
All right. 18, permits 17-year-olds to vote in primary and special elections if they will turn 18 by the next general election. So this means that they can vote in the primary and pick the person who will be in the general and actually, be able to be involved. So most of the Democratic and good government groups are saying yes on this one.
And the list I have says yes to.
Good.
Mhm.
All right. All right. This is more complicated. 19, changes certain property tax rules. So read it and we'll go from there. Okay, so right now, if you're over 55, you can move in the same county and your property tax rate won't go up. This expands it to the whole state, plus people who are disabled and people affected by a natural disaster. And then this was added also because a lot of people were inheriting homes and then renting them out and paying the lower tax.
So Teresa, can I say what the list I have says about this? They say no, and they sum it up as gives property tax breaks mostly to wealthy seniors with multiple properties.
I believe they can move like 2 or 3 times with this one, which is why the North Valley Democrats decided against it. But a lot of the Democratic clubs are for it. It's being supported by real estate agents because they get money from it. But is it fair if you move from one county to another because you're affecting how much money that county got? If you stayed in the same county, it wouldn't matter. So this one, I still haven't decided for sure. I'm leaning toward no.
I'm leaning towards yes.
We seem to be at loggerheads tonight, Shirley.
Right. I'm sorry. Well, one thing is that if you want to leave your house to a relative or a child, you won't be able to afterwards. The child will not be able to take over your tax base. Okay.
Yeah, they do now. My sister.
They do not. You can pass your house to your children, and they can keep your tax base.
They can't. I don't.
So if you have an indigent child or somebody who can't afford a house and you want to leave them your house, then they won't be able to. with the inflated rates that we have on property now, they won't be able to afford to live in your house. They'll have to sell it, which is heartbreaking.
Currently,
Really
they
is.
can. My
They
sister
cannot. They
inherited.
cannot.
My sister inherited
You
her
will
family
lose.
home,
You will lose that option.
and
You will
she's
lose
paying
that
way less
option.
taxes than I
I'm
do.
sorry, they don't say it here, but actually, if you read it from other sources, you will lose the opportunity to pass on your tax base to your child. And for that reason alone, it's worth anyone who is 55 or over to vote no on this one.
This is saying that people inherit a home could only pay lower taxes if they live in the house full time.
Well, I'm
Taxes,
saying they're going to live in the house full time. You know,
right?
you're
Taxes
leaving it
would
to
go
them.
up.
And we have
We have that now, though.
we have a lot of children who can't afford to buy a house, and if their parents leave them their house, then they can afford the tax base. So that would be better.
Double check that. I know my sister's paying way less taxes than I am, and she has 10 acres, and I have a little condo. So, because she inherits.
But you will lose that option. So I think for that alone, I'm voting no on this.
Yeah. Okay, Proposition 20 restricts parole for certain offenses currently considered to be nonviolent, authorizes felony sentences for certain offenses currently treated only as misdemeanors. This is the one that I thought Dorothy said yes on, and I was really surprised. Ava, are you still here? Can you double check that?
Who?
Ava? No, she's not there.
My list says no on 20.
Yeah, that's what most of the Democrat groups and good government groups are saying. And I swear that Dorothy's got a yes on it. And I was really surprised.
And this is like the summary that comes with that is reverses criminal justice reforms.
Right, it makes more, we just passed where we reduce sentences, and now this brings up again some other sentences.
Mm-hmm. Teresa, I can forward this email to you too, if you want to share it.
Okay, yeah, send that to me. The other thing I don't like about this initiative is the state could collect DNA from adults convicted of some misdemeanor crimes, such as drug possession, shoplifting, and domestic violence. So they would be able to collect DNA from just random, you know. It increases the prison population, which I thought we were trying to lower. So this is a yes if you want to expand the list of crimes that are classified as violent, and it's a no if you want to keep it the way it is. Okay, 21, let's see, I'm sorry. Expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property.
So isn't this basically saying that instead of the state making the rules on rent control, local cities can do it?
Basically, yeah.
Making,
The state
giving local control.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm asking the question is, so it's giving local control as opposed to the state controlling the whole.
Right. The state, I forgot when, in the 80s or 90s, passed a law that at that point you could not institute rent control unless it was under certain circumstances. So in LA, if you built the apartment building in 1 year, it's okay to have rent control. The next door apartment building might not have rent control because it was built at a later time. And they can raise the rent whatever they want. So this would not tell people, and the commercials say it has no plan. It doesn't tell anyone that you have to have rent control. It just allows the local communities, the counties, the cities to decide if they want rent control and how they want to do it.
Right. How does this relate to Costa-Hawkins?
I think it's overturning Costa-Hawkins, I think.
Okay.
Teresa, do you want to hear the 3-word summary for this?
Sure.
Oh, this just says expands rent control.
Okay, yeah. It actually doesn't expand rent control. Nobody has to do anything. It just allows it.
All right.
So it makes it, you can expand it, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so it would only apply to landlords who own more than 2 housing units. So if you rent out one house and you have another one, you won't even be affected.
And they recommend yes on this list.
Right.
Is that okay that I'm saying this, or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Anyone else that has any input, you know,
Yeah.
pop in also, sure.
I didn't really prepare for this. I just had the slides.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
I've been in like 4 or 5 meetings, including this one where we're discussing the propositions. The reason I'm supporting this, and I'm involved with the West Valley People's Alliance, and this is one of their big propositions that they're supporting, is right now we have developers who are coming in, tearing down older housing apartments and putting in these luxury units. And they'll know for sure that when they build something that they'll have 15 years in which to charge whatever rent they want, and then there's going to be a limit on it. And I lived in San Francisco where we had rent control. I knew exactly how much they were going to raise my rent every year. It was like a certain formula that they had. Okay, so the supporters on 21, I looked them up: Bernie Sanders, Maxine Waters, the California Democratic Party, the LA Times, Dolores Huerta, California Nurses Association, a bunch of unions, and ACLU. The opponents: Gavin Newsom, the Republican Party of California, Invitation Homes, the California Chamber of Commerce. The reason Newsom is against it is they recently passed a rent control bill saying how much they could raise the rent, I believe just under COVID. It was a kind of a pitiful bill, but he wants to see how it works before they make any changes. But the Democratic Party and most of the local parties are in favor of this. Okay, this you've probably seen 3 million commercials. Proposition 22 exempts app-based transportation and delivery companies from providing employee benefits to certain drivers. All right, so what this would do would take away their being called independent contractors. And I'm sorry.
That's right.
It would, yeah, they would be
That's right.
be independent contractors, not employees. And we just passed a law saying that if you're an employee, that you should get health care, that you should get overtime, that you should be eligible for unemployment. I believe they added as a sweetener the right to get health care, but they still would not be able to get unemployment. And these rideshare companies are making gazillion dollars off of these people that have no benefits.
But, you know, it's interesting because this relates to AB 5, which is the law that was passed codifying the dynamics decision. And there's 3 rules. There's certain exemptions, but there's 3 rules, 3 criteria, and you must meet all of them to be an independent contractor. If not, you're an employee. So, you know, employers would prefer to hire independent contractors because they don't want to pay benefits. And if you're an employee, you can get certain benefits. Now, and I think that this measure is being sponsored by Uber and Lyft because they want to continue to hire their people as independent contractors, but the new law makes them employees in most cases. And there are some drivers who would prefer to be independent contractors because then they can deduct certain expenses which are now excluded if you're an employee on your federal return. So it's a really convoluted thing, but generally speaking, if you want workers to be treated as employees, you would vote no on this.
And there will be less drivers if you vote no, but they will have better working conditions. They'll still have flexible hours. And one thing that's really bad about this initiative, if I remember correctly, it limits what the legislature can do. Where did I see that? Yeah, it limits how cities and counties from putting new rules on the companies. So if we decide later on that we want them to be regulated as employees, this initiative makes it really hard to change that. So most of the Democratic Party clubs are all saying no on this because they want to help workers.
Yeah, and probably the unions are against it also. So.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And the list I have says no as well.
Yeah. All right, we're getting to the end. A couple more. Okay, so this establishes state requirements for kidney dialysis clinics, requires on-site medical professional.
There's really a lot of ads opposing this particular measure.
Yeah, the good government groups, the Democratic Party groups, a lot of them are mixed on it.
My list says yes.
They say yes?
Yeah, it's because it requires a doctor or nurse practitioner on site during dialysis. And I can see why that would make people mixed. You know, is that necessary? Well, if you had a complication, you would want that, right? But I don't know if complications are common. So, yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, the problem is we don't know if it's necessary because we're not doctors.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't have to figure out this one. I'm leaning toward no. The dialysis companies are very profitable and they should be regulated, and they're not well regulated, but I'm not sure that this is the way to do it.
Well, from what I understand, there is only one company, one big company that doesn't want to increase their problems. I mean, you know, with having a doctor and having a doctor and a nurse in every dialysis place will put 7 of them out of business. That's what the patients are afraid of.
I just wanted to butt
the
in here.
expense, it will put them out of business.
Oh,
and we don't
Ruth
have
is
to
a doctor.
Yeah, you do not have to have one of each. You just have to have, I think it's pretty liberal. You can have a doctor, a nurse practitioner, or a PA. So, and you know, this is a medical procedure where people's blood is being exchanged. The other thing is it requires reporting of infections You have no idea what kind of serious infections go on from dialysis catheters, and you know, they're not being monitored or you know, correctly applied or, you know, extracted. So the bottom line is, personally, as a medical person, these companies, they have enough money. They need to have somebody on site, and they need to they have to report their infections. That's a public interest for us to know what centers have what infection rates. That's my
Thank
opinion.
you, Ruth.
So-
That's
so-
very helpful.
I think
So
I'll go
Ruth-
with her then.
Yeah.
So Ruth, I just wanted to clarify, so you would be in favor of this then? Is that what you're saying?
I would. I may, you know, I may be missing something, but having worked in critical care units and seeing how many infections there are, and I don't think it's an undue burden to have, you know, a PA who is not paid at the rate of a nephrologist to be on site at a dialysis center. I don't see that as being overly burdensome.
So,
One other good point about this bill is it makes all the patients treated the same way, regardless of how they pay, whether it's
Yes,
cash or
exactly,
insurance.
regardless of
So I was
insurance.
leaning toward it for that, but then I wasn't sure if you needed a doctor or a nurse practitioner.
is there a list of who supports it and who opposes it?
These slides don't have it. I had to look it up on the others.
Not much.
I think the
24.
Democratic Party may have passed on the, some of them passed and some of them were yeses and nos.
I think the nurses unions are in favor, and I think the dialysis center owners are opposed. That's what I think.
They don't want to spend the money that it takes to take care of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've worked in a hospital for 20 years. You need this to protect those patients.
Okay, so the ones that are against it is California Dialysis Council, the California Medical Association, Chamber of Commerce. So yeah, it sounds like the people that are for it are the best. See, these slides were done early before some of the supporters came out, so it doesn't have a total list of supporters either. All right, so 24 amends the consumer privacy laws. So we passed recently Consumer Privacy Act. Is one of the better ones in the US, but doesn't compare to what Europe has. And so this would amend it. There's some good things in it, and there's some stuff that not so good. North Valley, we had 2 tech gurus, and they're both against it. So we decided not to approve it, but a lot of the groups are saying vote for it.
The Times endorsed it, and the League of Women Voters. This is 24, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and the League of Women Voters says no.
They say no. Okay.
And the list I have says no. It
Okay.
says, and the summary is big tech scam to steal your info when you cross state border.
Oh.
Summary.
And it's funny because the 2 people who put it on the ballot got into some big argument, and one of them is against it now. So I guess she didn't like what the end product was.
Yeah.
One thing that's really bad about this law, if it passes, is okay, the legislation that was passed by the legislature said that if you did something wrong against their law, that you would have a small fine, and then if you did it again, you'd get a bigger fine and a bigger fine. This one, it would cost, let's see, oh, this is a different part of it. Anyway, this one, it fines you big time the first time. So a little website, maybe a nonprofit or a church or something, if they did something wrong, they could get fined really big, and there's no exemption. A lot of the privacy groups, some of the privacy groups are for it, some are against it. So this one has ASME supporting it, construction trades, professional firefighters, consumer watchdog. Now, Robert Hertzberg knows quite a bit about this kind of thing, and so does Ro Khanna and Ben Allen. So they're supporting it.
Huh.
And then the ones that are against, ACLU, California Alliance for Retired Americans, California Small Business Association, Consumer Federation, Public Citizen. So there's good government groups on both sides. The Electronic Foundation is against it. So I'm leaning toward no. And one thing the League of Women Voters, when they spoke at our church, they would always say, if you can't understand the bill, vote no. If you're not sure what it's going to do, vote no. I think this is the last one. This is the referendum on law that replaced money bail with system, I can't read the last part, based on public safety and flight risk. So right now, if you are charged with committing a crime and the legislature just decided that money bail was not fair. Before, if you're charged with a crime, even if you were found innocent or not guilty, you still forfeited your bail. So rich people were in and out of jail right away. The poor were stuck there for months. They couldn't work. They couldn't feed their family. And the bail system, the big banks are the insurance companies. Mike, do you remember?
Yeah.
I can't remember the insurance companies or the banks, but one of them is
The insurance companies.
Insurance companies. One of them, yeah, the insurance companies are behind all these small little bail bondsman companies and making amends. So this looks at whether it was a serious crime and other factors.
This is basically a yes vote approves the law replacing money bail, and a no vote rejects it.
Say again?
All right, a yes vote approves and a no vote rejects the law replacing money bail with a system based on public safety and flight risk. So
no, I think it's the opposite. Oh, let's get down. I think it's the opposite.
Well, that's what I'm reading from the booklet.
Right.
From the, from that, what do they call it?
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So basically, if you want to maintain no money bail, you vote yes. If you do a no vote, then it means some people would continue to pay bail in order to be released from jail before trial. And other people could continue to be released without paying bail. That's a no vote. A yes vote on this measure means no one would pay bail to be released from jail before trial. They would either be released automatically, or it would be based on their assessed risk of committing another crime.
Teresa.
Yeah.
I think people should also be aware of the fact that part of this is racially put in place a long time ago. So the people who didn't have money, who couldn't pay bail, left in jail, while people who were rich and white and privileged were able to get out of jail. And so that's part of the reason this is on the ballot.
Yeah. And my understanding is the United States is only one of 2 or 3 countries in the world that has money bail. So
I really don't know that much about this, so this is not to say one way or the other, but I do remember hearing some people say, because everybody's been reviewing all the ballot initiatives, that they thought that it left too much subjectivity in algorithms determining who would or wouldn't have to stay in jail, left too much up to the judges or something like that. And I'm just repeating stuff I've heard. I'm really not educated enough to know one way or the other.
Yeah, I had heard that too, that it was the algorithm was racially biased against people of color. And so even though it will not require the cash bail, and where you would think that might help, it is still going to keep more people in jail that we are trying to make it more fair for. They just
Yeah.
won't, the judge
Well-
will just decide and without a bail issue. And so therefore that the reason NAACP is on one side of it and I think it's ACLU is on the other because of those
Yeah.
things.
Then also LA Times, LA Voice, Bend the Arc, and the Sierra Club are recommending yes. Wait, excuse me, no, Bend the Arc is recommending no.
They are?
Sierra Club, League of Women Voters, LA Voice, and LA Times are recommending yes. So they're pretty preponderance, they're pretty big preponderance of yes votes on this particular list. LA Voice is a group that my wife works with Leo Beck Temple on their community organizing committee, and it's kind of a local social justice group, and they're saying they're recommending a yes vote on this. So,
Didn't Kamala Harris mention no money bail yesterday?
say that
she
again?
mentioned- Okay. Anyway, she on the federal level, she sponsored a bill getting rid of money bail. I think
Who,
she mentioned it last night too.
Kamala did?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. No, she was early on that.
Yeah.
So most of the Democratic good government groups are for this, for a yes. I keep thinking it's going to be a no. I don't know why. Yeah. And the legislature already passed it. They're trying to get it overturned by the people.
Yeah.
So, all right, we went way over tonight.
Yeah.
Anybody got anything else to say before we sign off?
Only thank you for all you've done.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone, for all your work, especially Teresa and Mike.
Both of you
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Teresa, for doing that.
Yeah, thanks, Teresa.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks
I would just
for
like to, I would just like to
backing
say
me
thank
up
you
on
all.
some.
It was good.
Thank
It was
you.
good.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody make sure to vote, and
And Ruth, thanks for your contribution too.
Oh yeah, you swayed my vote, Ruth.
Don't blame me. Thank you guys for doing this.
okay. Well,
If you want to be thoroughly disgusted, Google John Oliver dialysis machines or something. He's got like a 10-minute rant on them. Horrible.
I think you
Horrible
get.
things they do.
I don't have HBO now, so I'm not able
It's
to
on
watch
YouTube.
John. Yeah,
It's
but
on YouTube.
the times when I've watched John Oliver, he is given more information on the issues than any of the news programs.
Yeah.
I saw him a couple of his rants on net neutrality. And I mean, the newscaster, the cable news, they talk about what the effects are, but they don't talk about how it's going to do it. They don't really get into it. They tend to favor corporate-friendly legislation, and they don't really do the discussion like they should. So,
Yeah.
John Oliver is really good on that stuff.